I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning to everyone out there. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Thank you so much for being with us. We can't do the show without you, as always. Telephone number if you want to text me this morning, 870-275-9799. Man, gosh, there's a lot of news to get to today. We will be talking about the 92nd General Assembly and the highway tax increase plan. And I think it's safe. That's what that's what you have to call it. That's not any sort of political spin. That's what it is. It's a highway tax increase plan. Senator Terry Rice is the lead sponsor, and he presented before the Senate Revenue and Taxation Committee yesterday. And we're just gonna listen to it. We're gonna listen to it coming up at 6:30. I'm gonna let you hear some of the dissent, what some of other senators had to say. The Gazette had a write-up in it today, and thought it was pretty interesting. From what I can tell from listening to the committee, from watching the video, thankfully they're streaming so we can hear it, Senator Trent Garner, who is on the committee, voted against the measure because he said he cannot vote for a tax increase, although he supported other aspects of the bill, like taking general revenues. Senator Trent Garner saying this is something, taking general revenues for highways, something that should have been done years ago, or we wouldn't be in the situation we are in right now. And I think that's exactly right. Senator Garner is correct when he says that, in my opinion. I've heard that from many people. I've heard that from many people at the Capitol, at the Marble Palace, who say, look, we should have been taking, there have been advocates for taking general revenue for highways for a very, very long time. And they point to other states that do it. And if we had been doing this for, the last, 3-4 years, a lot of people think we wouldn't be in the situation. I'm just telling you what people are telling me. So Senator Trent Garner is certainly right there. Interestingly enough, the chairman of the Senate Revenue and Tax Committee, Jonathan Dismang, Senator Dismang said he couldn't support the legislation. One of the reasons he said that he couldn't support the legislation is because he thought it was unfair to levy a tax on the people without giving them the chance to vote on it. So, and again, that was the original plan. The original plan was to refer the new wholesale tax on gas and diesel, which will make you pay more at the pump, to the people. That's what they wanted to do. But early on in the session, there were some people saying, listen, if we're going to increase the taxes on the people, if we believe in it, then we should vote to do it. So, personally, I don't think they should be raising any more taxes from the people for roads or for anything, because we're already giving them money to do it. Because I'm a conservative, I don't believe in raising taxes, okay? And I know many of you, because you're conservative, don't believe in raising taxes. But let me just say, if you're going to vote to raise taxes, be a man and vote to raise taxes. Can I say that? Can I say be a man in this day and age? Because I'm using, I guess by saying be a man, would that mean then referring something out to the voters and wanting to say, well, I was technically not, I didn't vote for a tax increase. I voted for a vote of the people to, would that be being a woman then? In this day, and you'll find, I'm sure, it could trigger anyone out there. So that's what happened. I thought that was interesting though, because that was the original plan. So apparently, according to the committee video, Senator Dismang was hesitant because, you should refer it to the people and not take the up or down vote. No. That's, don't infer anything in that. I'm just saying that's his position. But when we had the majority leader of the House on early on in the session, Marcus Richmond, he seemed to indicate, listen, if we're going to do the tax, we just vote it up or down. That appears to have won out, at least in what the plan is, because Senator Terry Rice's bill passed out of committee yesterday. Again, there were two dissenting, Senator Trent Garner and Senator Jonathan Dismake. Senator Jason Rapert spoke on the record. We're going to listen to all this at 6:33, coming up at 6:33. Senator Rapert spoke on the record as well about how he thinks that the tax increase is necessary to have good roads, that we have to pay for good roads. And he said that, he's voted for tax cuts in the past. And so, he's voted for more tax cuts, he says, than he has voted for tax increases. And so this is just one of those things. I'm just summarizing his position from what I can gather. Again, we'll listen to it a little later. There was some liberal opposition to the hybrid tax. They want to tax these electric and hybrid vehicles more. And that's making the environmentalists kind of crazy because they're like, you're taxing new technology. Anyway, that's pretty interesting audio. We'll get to that here in a minute as well. Let's see, what else do we have here in terms of the highway plan? This is just one piece of it. There's going to be more, I think, another piece of accompanying legislation when it comes to the highway plan. So we'll be watching that as well. But this was just essentially the hybrid piece, I think the general revenue piece, and it was the new sales tax at the wholesale level for your gas and your diesel, which is going to mean you're going to pay more at the pump. I will just say, the argument that if you want good roads, you have to pay for them, that doesn't really answer the fact that we're already paying for them. We're already paying, the Gazette reported $300, more than $300 a person for our roads. Almost $1 billion we're giving to the government. And let's be clear, the fact of the matter is they have prioritized the money we're already giving them to other needs that they think are more important than roads. And they think it's easier to come to the people and tax them more than to look at their own house and cut spending. The whiteboard back home, I'm pretty sure, still says cut spending. And that's what needs to happen. There are two things going on right now with this highway tax plan. From what I can tell, now this could change, but from what I can tell, there's absolutely no appetite to cut spending, and there's absolutely zero fear of the people voting these people out of office for not adhering to the no tax cut policy of no tax hike policy of Republicans. Those two things are going on right now, from what I can tell. Now, this legislator does have a quite different feel than legislators in the past. It does have much more of an independent feel. That's just my opinion. And as I've been down here for a while doing this, it feels a little bit more independent. It definitely feels different. People are flexing their muscles a little bit more from a legislative standpoint. And I think that's generally positive, but it's a baby step. But I will tell you, it doesn't appear to me there's any appetite to cut spending, and there's no fear of the people back home. Not in terms of this. And I think it has to, if it was an income tax increase, I think everybody would be afraid. This is an education problem in a way. It also may reflect popular opinion as well. I mean, I'll at least entertain that idea. It's just speculative. If they were voting to raise the income tax, then they would never do that. But they will vote to raise your gas tax to pay for roads. You know what I'm saying? And this is something that other states have done, and so it's kind of, in a way, it's like, well, other states have done it, so this is okay for us to do. Now, I personally think it's a terrible idea, but that's just me. But the reality of the situation is, somehow, somewhere along the way, Republicans became convinced that they can increase your taxes when it comes to paying for your roads, and the people aren't going to be as upset about it. And it's because, quite frankly, there is not as much knowledge out there about the dangers of what happens when you just continue feeding more and more money to the government. They don't understand. A lot of people understand that your economic freedom shrinks when that happens. And economic freedom is a prerequisite to all other freedoms. Telephone number 870-275-9799. All right, we'll get to more of that at 6:33. Oh, you know what we're doing at 7 today? You know what we're doing at 7? This is kind of fun to me. So, we're an early morning broadcast. We're an early morning show. We don't get, a lot of times, we don't get to cover the stuff that goes on live. But at 7 o'clock today, the Senate State Agencies Committee is convening at 7 a.m. this morning, and we're going to bring you that coverage live. And check it out. They're talking about the constitutional amendments, Senate joint resolutions proposing constitutional amendments. They're going to be talking about, the legislature can refer. The legislature can refer, I think. Legislature can refer three constitutional amendments per session. Now, I want to remind the legislature they don't have to refer three. You can refer three, but there is this thought around there that they have to refer three to the people, and so they have a few things that they want to talk about. One of them is SJR 1 by Senator Jim Hendren. Which would be a constitutional amendment to reduce the number of days the General Assembly is in session. They've got one by Dave Wallace, which is SJR 2, a constitutional amendment providing that the state of Arkansas shall never be made a defendant. So that's a big one. That's one that needs to get on there because it's about sovereign immunity. Right now, the king can do no wrong. We the people cannot sue the state of Arkansas because of a Supreme Court ruling back last year. Oh, speaking of Supreme Court rulings, did you guys hear about civil asset forfeiture? The Supreme Court of the United States ruling that these local governments can't do this civil asset forfeiture to raise money and stuff, And we were just talking about this the other day because there's a bill out there by Senator Bart Hester and State Representative Austin McCullum, which I think the Supreme Court ruling will push this state law through. It's going to give it all kinds of credibility to say we've got to stop confiscating people's wealth when they haven't committed a crime. This happens all the time. We told you about a guy who was traveling through Arkansas to Memphis, Tennessee with 10 grand in cash to buy a car and was stopped and for speeding or something. And when he was stopped for speeding, and then they took his cash away and he couldn't get it back. I mean, that's just wrong. He wasn't convicted of a serious crime. I mean, I believe it was speeding is why he was pulled over, but it was something benign. It was something that was certainly not felonious. Speaking of felonies, Jesse Smollett, or it's actually pronounced Jussie Smollett. Everyone says Jesse, but it's spelled J-U. So I'm saying it's Jussie. Jussie Smollett is now being charged with felonious disorderly conduct? Is that what it is? They're saying he reported a fake crime to the police. Only in America, in order to be oppressed, you have to hire two Nigerians. I wonder what those Nigerians feel like. I wonder if Jesse Smollett was like, "Hey, Nigerians, I've got an awesome get rich quick scheme for you. All you got to do is trust me, and I'm gonna pay you $3,500, and then you're gonna beat me up, and it's gonna be great." Would that make in hindsight, does that make Jussie Smollett does he make like the only American to ever scam Nigerians? I'm just a question, because a lot of times it's Nigerians that scam Americans. It's like, hey, I'm a Nigerian prince. I just got to get back to my kingdom. I just need your social security number to help me out. The social security number, date of birth, and a bank account number. And I can wire you all of this money. But Jussie Smollett's like, no, I'm going to scam the Nigerians. Although those Nigerians, boy, they flipped, didn't they? They rolled over quick, I guess Nigerians don't really care. They don't know anything about snitches, and how the snitches are supposed to get stitches. I don't think they understand that concept. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. I can believe it, but if you go around and look, Jussie Smollett is best friends with some of the biggest Democrats out there. Friends with Kamala Extract Harris, friends with Barack Obama, friends with Michelle Obama. They've got pictures all over the place of them. Oh, by the way, Kamala Extract Harris, his own father, is out there disparaging his own daughter because of her comments on smoking marijuana and being part Jamaican. And apparently her dad, who's Jamaican, doesn't like Jamaican stereotypes about Jamaicans that just, smoke pot all day. That's an interesting, I'll bring that to you. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But let me know what you think about this situation with Jussie Smollett. I mean, isn't this, what a sick mind. I'll tell you this, if you go back and watch the Good Morning America interview with Robin Roberts, and this guy's crying, talking about how I feared for my life. And it's like, wow. Wow. Yeah, if anything, maybe he can use that interview to convince the ABC studios that he's still a good enough actor and that they need to look past his crimes and his felonious activity. They're like, but listen, I was lying the whole time. Look how good of an actor I was on GMA. Certainly, you can look past my felonious activity and you could, just recognize the talent. We're going to take a break. Back in just a moment.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back to the program. We got constitutional attorney, talk radio host Chris Ann Hall is on the line. Chris Ann, thanks for spending some time with us this morning.
Oh, no, it is my pleasure. Thank you so much.
And thanks for coming to Arkansas. How's your trip been so far? Let's say you've been to, back on the 18th, you were at AQ Chicken House in Springdale, and last night the Warren's Rec Room in Alma. How's that been so far?
Man, it's been fantastic. The enthusiasm, the patriotism, and the hospitality of the people here in Arkansas is just among the best. And we have been well received, and the people are just excited and enthusiastic about the education. We taught on the Fourth Amendment there in Springdale. And then the lesson that I teach called America Disarmed in Alma.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
870-275-9799 is the telephone number if you would like to text us this morning. That's 870-275-9799. I want to ask you to bear with us. We are aware of certain technical difficulties the show's been having in the last couple of days. When it just comes to quality, not I know there's been some other issues that actually have nothing to do with us, but we are doing the best we can to resolve it, and so we appreciate your patience with that. Jussie Smollett. Okay, so if you're just joining us, you've probably heard. Yeah, he's now been charged with disorderly conduct for filing a false police report. He's been charged with one count of felony disorderly conduct for filing a false police report, according to Cook County Attorney's Office. He's supposed to be in court. He hasn't actually, as of this morning, or no, he was supposed to turn himself in sometime yesterday, but he hadn't. So they're saying he's going to turn himself in today at some point. But so he's not in custody. And let's see, Small is not in custody. Google Me told ABC News police are not actively looking for the actor because this is not a violent crime, but said the longer this goes, the more we have to do what we have to do. There's been some people that have pointed out here the vast amount of resources that the city of Chicago has committed to this particular case. That, Chicago's a very violent place. There are people that die in Chicago every week. Okay. Every week. Somebody just texted me, said that he saw one report that he is now in custody. Okay. So as an hour ago, I don't think he was, but so he may be in custody now. But here's the thing. Vast amount of resources, all these murders that happen in Chicago every year get no media attention at all. Think about this. I mean, and we're talking about gangs in Chicago killing other people. They contribute to the national murder rate in a percentage that anybody would be uncomfortable with, and nobody says anything about it. And the next gun tragedy or the next mass murder, they all talk about guns and having to get rid of guns, but you never hear them talk about the violence in Chicago. You never hear them talk about that. But they're going to talk about this, and really it all has to do with here's the thing. If Jussie Smollett wants to mount a defense against what he has done, apparently done, then he needs to claim that he has a psychological disorder called Trump derangement syndrome. Because that's what he has. Trump derangement syndrome is actually real. And Donald Trump, folks, I had an article from Salon last week and thought it was a satire piece. The election of Donald Trump is making some liberal women not be intimate with their male counterparts because Donald Trump accentuates the aspects of maleness that make me uncomfortable. So they're not so government. These people are so dependent on government. In order to have sex, they have to have the right guy in their White House so they can psychologically get to where they need to go in the bedroom. That is insane. Trump derangement syndrome also makes a guy write himself a fake letter to the studio and then pay two Nigerians to beat him up in front of a camera he thinks is pointed at them at Chicago, Illinois. At 3 a.m., he thought he could sell the story that he was such a good actor, this Marlon Brando of our generation, that he was such a good actor that he could convince us that there were a couple of guys waiting with a noose and bleach for him in Chicago, Illinois at 3 a.m. who boldly claim this is MAGA country. That's just stupid that he even thought he could ever convince that people would buy it, because there were people who professionally work on hate crimes that from the very beginning thought, something doesn't seem right about this. Back in just a moment.
which is also the event that I will be teaching in Jonesboro on Friday, America Disarmed. And then on Thursday in Jonesboro, I'm going to be teaching on state sovereignty.
Wow. I'm really excited. So I'm gonna be there because I'm in Little Rock now,
Oh,
but I'll be there at the Hilton Garden Inn tomorrow and on Friday, and so I'm really excited to meet you in person. First of all, and second of all, to listen to some great instruction and great teaching on our founding documents. And so it says here so that you're going to be in Jonesboro tomorrow night and Friday night at the Hilton Garden Inn. And then you'll head down, I guess, on Saturday, the Courtyard Marriott in Hot Springs at 10 a.m. That is in Hot Springs. And so you're really just making just these crisscross trips across the state, and I think that's great.
Yeah, no, we're very, very excited about it. And this is the longest we've had to teach in Arkansas. And like I said, the people here are just so excited about these lessons in liberty because, Paul, we're not seeing these lessons taught anywhere. The lessons that are dedicated to the original understanding of the Constitution, dedicated to individual personal liberty and the power that the people have through their own activity, through that of their state and local governments, to restore the liberties that America was founded upon. People are tired of waiting on Washington, D.C., and I'm thankful that we're coming to the end of our love of and desire for a Messiah in D.C. to save the American people. People are beginning to realize that the only real defense of liberty is the personal defense, and that only comes through personal knowledge and understanding of liberty itself, but also the way our government was created and the proper operation of that government under our constitutional republic.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. You mentioned, I'd like to explore that. You mentioned this Messiah complex. Now, typically, that's something that is seen on the left. It certainly was something that was seen with Barack Obama. Then you look at how, and I know you're familiar with this, the executive branch. Okay, this has just grown over the years, over our 200-year history. It's gotten more and more powerful, and now you do have President Trump in there, and I think it's fair to say there would probably be some that would say that the Messiah complex is also seen, and President Trump just needs to do things. We're seeing that now with President Trump. Some people saying he's going.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back. Yeah, so it is, let's see here. I do have this report, just so you know, because an hour ago this was not the case, but Jussie Smollett has been arrested. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. He has been arrested, and this according to the BBC. Being charged with filing a false police report. So anyway, we can move on here. But hey, I did have a text message. This idea of, well, I mean, in a way, I mean, it's with what is called, it's the definition of what is called a false flag. And so the whole Jussie Smollett thing was a false flag to try to reinforce right after the media got the Covington Catholic Boys School demonstrably wrong. This was an attempt to say, hey, Trump supporters are still racist. They're out there trying to lynch people. Okay. And this happened over in this, these little tiny little false flags. They happen over in Fayetteville, back when the, back when they were trying to pass their city ordinances, and you had that were going to discriminate or open litigation against churches, but they were saying that these are civil rights protections for the LBGT, RSTLNE, would you like to buy a Val community? When that happened, there were some of the pro ordinance people that according to some, went over and on their own signs, spray painted, a 3-letter word that's meant to be derogatory towards gay people. So the left is, then you got that guy in Mississippi. What was that back during the, I can't remember, was that back during the Roy Moore thing? Or so was it in Alabama or Mississippi? But you had a black church that was burnt to the ground and all this racist stuff written on the side, and they found out that it was actually a black parishioner that burnt his own church down just to make white people look racist and Republicans look racist. There's a lot of examples of this out there. And it's really sad because it makes the ones that can that could be legitimate. Now everybody doesn't believe anybody. You know what I'm saying? Folks, yesterday, the Arkansas General Assembly advanced part of their new highway plan that involves tax increases on the people at the pump if you want to buy gas or diesel. Senator Terry Rice was the lead sponsor and got his bill past the Arkansas Senate Committee on Revenue and Taxation. We're going to listen in on some of what Terry Rice said and what others had to say about this bill yesterday at the Marble Palace. Joe, whenever you're ready, here is Senator Terry Rice running his bill, the highway, part of the Arkansas Highway Tax Plan that does involve tax increases. Take a listen.
Amendment that is a technical correction is just 3 words. Arkansas Constitution was put in twice consecutively, so taking one of those out, that is page 2, line 25 shows, and page 724 where it says wholesale rate should say wholesale tax rate, left the word tax.
Motion documented.
All right, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, congratulations. Amendment's adopted. Senator, you're recognized to present Senate Bill 336 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee, for allowing me to present today. I'd also like to thank the many people that have worked a lot longer than me on trying to find a highway investment program that worked. It is a lot of input from a lot of people, and you're never going to have something perfect. SB 336 to provide additional revenue for the maintenance and repair of highways, streets, and bridges in the state. This is the first of 2 parts of Governor Hutchinson's highway investment program. And let me just start out by telling you what it's not. It's not the $478 million that has been determined that was needed, that in the last couple of years our own audit people have looked at figures and all and came out with right in the same figures. It's not as many dollars as quickly as a lot of people wanted, and it doesn't satisfy those who don't want to spend money on highways, any more money on highways, because of the taxes we're paying already, and I realize that. I feel like we cannot kick the can down the road anymore. We've all used that phrase as we've heard from our constituents. I believe that the governor's highway investment program is 3 things. It's substantial, it's prudent, and it's long-term. I think those 3 things.
That's Senator Terry Rice. He says it's substantial, prudent, long-term. That's what this highway plan is. And he says we don't need to kick the can down the road. Now, listen, I like Senator Terry Rice. I do. I disagree with him on this. Issue. And, people who people can agree on issues one day and disagree on the next. That's kind of the way politics seems to work. I'm figuring that out. But I will just tell you this. When he says we're kicking the can down the road, I would agree, but not to. We haven't been kicking the can down the road by not raising the taxes on the people. We've been kicking the can down the road by not cutting spending. It's very simple. So I would agree, we're kicking the can down the road. We just refuse to cut spending in this state. We refuse. I don't understand. I really don't. We have this great balanced budget amendment, and it's great. But unfortunately, the way the Revenue Stabilization Act is set up, it basically allows these legislators to prioritize their spending so whatever comes in gets spent. I mean, that's how the budget is balanced, because they have category A, category B. Category A is, priority. Category B is not necessarily, but so once all of category A is spent, then whatever else comes in gets funded out of category B, and so on. Well, okay. Well, that sounds great. That is a way to balance a budget, but it basically says that the tax structure of this state drives the spending, meaning if the tax revenue isn't there, they can't spend it, which means that we must have lower taxes to constrain the government from spending so much money. And here we have a move to increase the government's revenue, a brand new tributary, because they're taxing a new tax at the wholesale level. So you're going to pay the tax at the wholesale level at the pump, and you're going to pay the current 24-cent gas tax that we have right now at the pump. They're going to tax your gas twice. That's what this really is. And I don't think the average Arkansan wants to pay more at the pump when we're already giving them so much money to build our roads. They just are not prioritizing the money in the government as a whole. They are not putting. Now, the one thing that this does that is good is that it's going to take money from general revenue and at least start that. But this is just, in my opinion, not the right way to go. But again, because I guess people can agree to disagree. Let's go back to Terry Rice from yesterday, Joe, whenever you're ready.
Things are needed. Under Senate Bill 336, the state will impose a new percentage-based tax on gasoline and diesel. The new tax will be based on the average regional cost of fuel in the Gulf States region during the 2018 calendar year, as publicly reported by the U.S. Department of Energy. The tax will be determined by multiplying these average prices by 1.6% for gas, 2.9% for diesel, and these percentages are calculated to raise 3 cents per gallon on gasoline and 6 cents per gallon on diesel. The rates of the tax will be recalculated annually based on prices for the region. If fuel prices fall, and I've been asked by this for some, the rate will remain constant from the prior year. If the fuel price increases, the rate of the tax cannot increase more than 1/10 of a penny. That translates a maximum increase of 1% over a decade. We've all talked about the need for indexing, as many states do, or we probably wouldn't be in as bad a shape as we are. The combined gas and diesel tax will raise an estimated $86 million annually, including $58 million of that for the Arkansas Department of Transportation, $26 million for city and county road funding. The funding would begin October 1st, 2019.
Stop.
On the casino tax
funding would begin October 1st of 2019. I feel that I have to point something out. This is a tax increase, and boy, they're going to collect that October 2019. But when you cut taxes, you always got to wait 2 years. Just an observation. It's the mentality. When they pass a tax increase, you better believe they're going to start collecting that money as soon as they can. But when they pass a tax cut, like the income tax cut, we don't see the 6.9% fall to 5.9 for 2 years. We don't fully realize it for 2 years. I want you to think about that. And this reinforces the skepticism of government that the people have, the opinion that the people have on government. tax cuts will have sunset clauses. Tax increases don't. If a tax increase does have a sunset clause, what's the Arkansas legislature about to do? They're about to refer it back to the people to make sure and ask them to keep the tax increase permanent on your sales taxes to fund roads. This entire process, unfortunately, is a microcosm of just what government does at all levels. And I'm just going to say this, and I think it's appropriate to quote Grover Norquist, considering Grover Norquist is the guy that tries to get everybody to sign these no tax pledges that we're not going to increase taxes. Politicians push for tax increases when they don't want to govern. Politicians push for tax increases when they don't want to govern. Now, I know this might be hurtful to hear, but I believe that's the truth. If you look at these taxes that are consumption-based, especially, meaning the more people that drive through your state or the more people that are in your state, the more money you get. Well, so your revenue is going to go up, and your revenue as a whole, the state collects more and more revenue from the people every single year. Okay, well, then there's your increase, and you figure it out. You budget like anybody else would. Wouldn't you love the difference is there's a lot of people that never get an increase in their revenue in terms of their individual households. They don't get it every year. They got to wait. They got to wait it out. Not in terms of government. Not right now. Right now, it's very good going for the government. And you're telling me you can't plan ahead? You're going to increase spending as much as we have, $500 million over the last 4 years. We've spent $500 million more. Well, there's your tax increase money. There's your roads money, but we didn't save any of it. And so that's why we are where we are. Skipping ahead, there was a liberal in the audience who's really upset that hybrid and electric vehicles are being taxed. Now, Barry Haas is his name, or Haas, Barry Haas, and he spoke against the income tax cuts because he's a big progressive liberal. So he really didn't like the fact, and he's a hybrid owner himself, and this is what he had to say about why Terry Rice's bill was bad. So I disagree with Terry Rice because of the tax increase. Barry Haas, the liberal, disagrees because he's an environmentalist and he shouldn't be taxed more because his car is putting out less pollutants. Never mind the fact that the batteries on some of these cars, the carbon footprint that it takes to manufacture some of these batteries on electric cars is more than what you save during the lifetime of driving an electric car around. But I digress. Here's Barry Haas from yesterday.
For 12 and a half years. My vehicle goes 3 times as far on a 1 gallon of gas than the average Arkansas vehicle, and I'm basing that on Federal Highway Administration numbers. The Federal Highway Administration says that the average Arkansan drives 15,850 miles a year and uses 1,065 gallons of gas. You're proposing a 3 cent a gallon gas tax increase. By my math, 3 cents times 1,065 gallons is $31.95 a year. So you're proposing putting to the voters a $31.95. Let's just round it to $32 for gas vehicles, and yet you're proposing taxing me $100 as a hybrid owner, which is more than 3 times that. My car, because I go 3 times as far on a gallon of gas, I spew 1/3 as much pollutants into the air. I know Senator Bledsoe in particular is interested in health issues. That means that you all, your children, your grandchildren, and everyone else benefits from cleaner air and fewer health problems related to pollution in the air we all breathe. Think asthma, think COPD, think emphysema. Energy efficiency is not a luxury. Others have mentioned that there is a real risk if you overtax new technologies. I know there's also legislation this session dealing with solar energy, net metering, et cetera. if Arkansas is seen as a state that is discouraging new technologies, new industries, whether it be hybrid or electric vehicles, whether it be solar energy, there is an enormous risk that industries and individuals will choose not to come and do business in the state or live here. So even Entergy has figured out that solar is the road to the future. Now, if Entergy can figure it out, the rest of us can too. So I would, and I want to mention one other thing. 2 years ago, Representative Andy Davis filed a bill that would put a $90 tax on hybrids, $184 tax.
Liberal who's against it because of environmental concerns and, cleaner air and that sort of thing. So if you'll skip down to Senator Trent Garner, Joe, he had a question for Mr. Haas, I'm sorry. You pronounce it Haas, or at least he does. So it's Barry Haas. And Senator Gardner, he wanted to say a few things to Mr. Haas. Listen.
Mr. Chairman, so you said for 12 years you've been enjoying our roads at the reduced rate. For 12 years you've been using those roads, tearing those roads up for a reduced rate. For 12 years you've been doing that, paying a less of a fee. And when we finally try to address it, you're now calling that grossly unfair, even though for those 12 years you've been reaping that benefit at a less rate than the average Arkansan. And so today you're telling us that this number isn't good. What number would be good to you? My thing is, I don't think there's a number we could ever reach where it would be fair for you. You'd rather have the average Arkansan who drive every single day pay for that benefit.
Actually, no, Senator Garner. I already suggested if you want to tax me the same amount as what you're taxing gas-only vehicles, that's fair. If you want to use me as a cash cow, that's not fair.
Mr. Chairman, I got to follow up on that. We're not using you as a cash cow. We're making it fair for the system, and that for years now have been taken disadvantage of. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. And then so up next, Gary Kaywood.
Let's see here. Skip down to, if you can, Joe. Let's go to the next marker there, where Senator Trent Garner and Larry Teague and Senator Trent Garner again, and let's start there, so that we can kind of hear how this closed out. There was a lot of debate back and forth on this bill, it seems like, but of course it had the support. It did advance. But let's go to that next cut, Joe.
Yes, sir. Senator Teague, you're recognized.
Senator Rice, does the diesel tax apply to over the road or all diesel tax?
Nobody had asked me that, but I specifically followed up on that to make sure that it does not affect off-road fuels. So,
thank you.
Farmer that's got a diesel truck that has to do road diesel, he's going to pay, but his equipment that's off-road does not.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Senator Garner, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to briefly say I'll be voting no on this, and it has to do with the 3 and 6 cents sales tax increase, or the gas tax increase. I won't belabor that point. What I will say is I strongly support Senator Rice's efforts to take general revenue funds and use them in a responsible manner. I think this should have been done years ago, and if it did, we wouldn't have to address that. I must also say I strongly agree with the concept of charging the hybrid and electric vehicles more money. And I don't let a special interest group who comes here to lobby against people's tax cuts over and over again come up here and lobby for their people to have to pay their fair share and put a burden on everybody else. I appreciate you closing this loophole in this bill. I'm strongly supportive of that, and I just want that to be on the record. Thank you, Senator Rice.
Thank you, Senator Garner. Senator Rapert, you're recognized.
So from that point, oh no, let's keep listening. Here's Senator Rapert. This is Senator. So you've got Senator Garner who won't vote for it because of a tax increase, and then you have Senator Rapert who comes and says that he will vote for it. Listen to his reasoning.
Senator Rice, I want to thank you for leading the bill and all the work that's gone into this. And obviously, we have to make hard decisions. And definitely for me, this one is really not a hard decision. I think since I've been down here, which is nearly a decade now, I think the last time they told me I voted on over just about 500 million plus in tax cuts since we've been here. And I'm very proud of what we've been able to do. But I also know that I want to have good roads. I want to have people have an opportunity to have a good road to put in a business somewhere and for people to traverse this state and to enjoy the state. And we have the responsibility to make decisions on what we want to spend our funds on as a community, as a state, as a society. And though I would love to always cut taxes, I do know that if you're going to have things, you've got to pay for it. And I believe that this is a good investment for the future of the state. It's a good investment for our people. And I believe that this has been the best thing that we could come up with at this particular moment, and I support the bill.
Do we have any other questions?
All right, that's Senator Jason Rayburn. He supported the highway tax plan that does have these tax increases. Like, folks, just make up your mind for yourself. I will tell you this, from what I can tell, and I know we got to go to break, I think if we would have not increased spending the last 4 years, we just continue to tax, we continue to spend and spend and spend. We don't get spending under control. They come back to the people and ask for more money. We're not prioritizing our funds on the things that a majority of us all agree on, which is we all want good roads. We just may not want the government to do some of the other stuff that it feels obligated to do for us. We've got to take a break. Back in a minute.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. Around Congress by using this 1976 law or 1970s law to declare a national emergency and reallocate funds. As a constitutionalist, where do you fall down on that?
Well, the President of the United States, no matter whether you like him or not, or he's your guy or not, doesn't have an authority delegated to him by the Constitution to issue a declaration of national emergency. That is simply not a power that we find in Article 2. And Article 2 is the only source of constitutional authority for the President of the United States. And the idea that because Congress is failing to do this, that it's somehow the duty of the President to pick up a dropped obligation of Congress is also an unconstitutional idea. Our founders created the office of the executive with very, very limited authority for a very specific reason. They were
determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. That about wraps up the first hour. We're going to be watching as the Senate State Agencies Committee convenes here scheduled in about 2 minutes. They're going to be talking about proposed constitutional amendments that they can refer to the people to vote on. And so we're going to bring that to you live as soon as the stream starts, coming up here at 7:05. Then at 7:33, we'll be talking with Fort Smith attorney Joey McCutcheon about people who are proponents of tax increases locally but don't want to have public debates about it to defend their positions. We have one more hour coming your way next.
they were afraid that over the years that the president would become a king, consuming power from the executive and the judicial branches and becoming the very kind of dictator that we separated from in 76. And the idea that the president should now exercise this power is not only unnecessary, but it is a very dangerous precedent to set. And what we have to understand is through our constitutional republic, if Congress fails to act in a delegated authority, that power does not somehow transfer to another branch of the federal government. Constitutionally speaking, if any branch of government fails in their responsibility through delegated power, that authority then returns to the place from which that power was delegated. And that means that the power returns to the states. The border issue, border security, is not an executive authority. It is solely a congressional authority to declare war or to repel insurrections and to defeat any invasion, or to order the defeat of any invasion. Once Congress then makes those orders, then it's the executive branch, and then only then is it the executive branch's authority to act. But when Congress fails, it becomes the duty of the state to protect their people. So what we should be really seeing, Paul, is a discussion in the public forum and in the political forum about how we activate our states to do their job. And the most discouraging thing is that this discussion is simply not being had. And I believe that it's not being had because the people in power in the federal government don't want the American people to be acquainted with the real power and authority that they possess on the state and local level.
Wow, I can't wait to hear you teach on state sovereignty. And I know you have a lot of this stuff is up on Liberty First University. Is it libertyfirstuniversity.com? Is that what it is, Chris-Ann?
Yes, it's okay. libertyfirstuniversity.com.
Yeah, so this is a fascinating situation to me. So I want to back up with what you said. So talk a little bit about the authority that the legislative branch, Congress, delegated to, and maybe it was unconstitutional when they did, but they passed this law in the 70s. They passed it, saying that the executive can declare national emergency. So I mean, I've heard before in Article 1, Section 1, it's the non-delegation clause. So talk a little bit about that, because this is a journey, right? This has been a gradual thing where, the executive branch gets larger because in many cases Congress is allowing it to.
Yeah, well, and again, the transfer of power is a per se unconstitutional act, which means the very idea that Congress can transfer power to the president is wrong. And it makes that transfer of power, even though it is done via legislative act, it makes that a null and void act. Article 6, Clause 2 is the authority in the Constitution. It says, this Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof shall be the supreme law of the land. And we know from that clause that laws made by Congress, which are not made in pursuance to the Constitution, are therefore not the supreme law of the land, and the drafters of the Constitution went so far to say that those particular laws are null and void. So when Congress creates a law that is not made within the authority of the Constitution or is contrary to an authority within the Constitution, then those laws have the effect of no law at all. And that's what we have to really understand, is that this law that Congress created in the 70s is simply a null and void act because it's contrary to the Constitution itself. And the only authority that this law possesses is the authority that we allow it to have in its illegal status, which means that we're allowing the Constitution, we're allowing Congress and the office of the president to act illegally, contrary to
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Currently, right now, the Senate State Agencies Committee, as part of the 92nd General Assembly at the Marble Palace, has convened the State Senate Committee on State Agencies. They are considering potential resolutions or resolutions for potential constitutional amendments that they would refer to the people to vote on. They're meeting right now. We have the video. Right now, I believe the President Pro Tem, Senator Jim Hendren, is speaking on his legislation, which is a constitutional amendment that would reduce the number of days the General Assembly is in session and repeal the fiscal session of the General Assembly entirely. Let's listen in to Senator Jim Hendren. Actually, right now, I think that he is done, and now Senator Dave Wallace is on to his bill, SJR 2, which is a constitutional amendment providing that the state of Arkansas shall never be made a defendant. This is huge. This is sovereign immunity, which would allow us to sue the state. We can't do that right now because of a Supreme Court ruling last year. Let's listen to Senator Dave Wallace.
Our people had the right to sue the state of Arkansas. And the system worked. Now they don't have that right. And we like to think that all of our folks in government make good decisions. We like to think that all of our folks in government mean well, but that's not always the case. And we've taken away the ability of our citizens of Arkansas to appear before a jury of their peers and to ask for redress on damages caused to them by the state. And we need to change that. So far, sovereign immunity has applied to tax cases. DFA has followed policy of not asserting sovereign immunity in tax cases. So it's not yet become a major problem for Arkansas taxpayers. However, this non-assertive policy is a choice of our director of DFA and ultimately the governor. The current administration has chosen this path. What will a next administration choose? If DFA in the future begins to assert sovereign immunity, tax refund claims would be impossible. Litigation would be impossible. A taxpayer's right on a refund claim would effectively end with DFA. Beyond DFA administrative taxes, other tax administrators are less constrained. Already, even a local jurisdiction, Faulkner County, has asserted sovereign immunity in a property tax case. That's why I'm proposing this amendment, and I'm closed.
Questions from the committee? Senator Garner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with you, Senator Wallace. I think this is a big decision that happened. When this first happened, we were all worried about the consequence of it. And as it's played out, the courts defined sovereign immunity to me to basically mean the state can be sued unless a legislator has a part in it. I think it was a naked power grab against the legislator specifically, similar to the law rolling decision. as Senator Henry was talking, I was reading through his amendment. I noticed it touched more than one part of the Constitution. And under the new law, Roland, if you take a strict interpretation of that, that might be grossly unconstitutional due to this new power grab by our Supreme Court. Between that and the sovereign immunity decision they make, I think it's a stepping on the co-equal branches of government, and I appreciate you bringing this amendment to rectify one part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gardner.
Senator Bond?
Well, Senator Garner and I agree for different reasons, I think, but I like this one also. How many can I be for? Do we need to talk about that?
You can be for all of them.
Today's
only one going to get out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Again, no one has signed up to speak for or against it, Senator Wallace. So
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
members.
Okay, so this right now
Senator
is just
Ingram has sent me word that
kind of
he
a
is
preliminary hearing of proposed constitutional amendments. You got some positive support there from Senator Trent Gardner, Democrat Senator Will Bond as well. Right now, because of the Arkansas Supreme Court, the government can essentially do no wrong. The government can essentially do no wrong. If they do something wrong, we can't sue them. We have no redress. We have no action that we can take because they are sovereign. They cannot be defendants in their own courts. And so this is a big deal. And so Dave Wallace trying to do something about it is a very, very good thing. And it looks like now Senator Breanne Davis has come, and her bill is SJR 6. A constitutional amendment, a proposed constitutional amendment providing that future ballot initiatives not reference one or more counties or cities by name if the intent is to grant to those counties or cities special powers, privileges, opportunities, or benefits. I'm curious. Let's listen in here if this has something to do with a recent casino amendment.
Local option to vote on this first as the people of Pope County. And that was approved with 68% of the vote. And I believe that sends a strong message that Pope County citizens wanted a voice in whether or not we had a casino license approved for Pope County. But that didn't happen for us. We had 74 other counties decide for us whether or not we would be in the middle of a very interesting situation in a battle for a casino license. I don't believe this is right. I think that's something we heard all throughout early voting and before the election was, well, it's not in my backyard, so I'm going to vote for it. And what a horrible thing to do to another county. And so this ballot initiative, or what this does, is simply says you can't list a city or county by name, and so that doesn't happen again. It's not right. The people, we talk about local control, local power, and the people of Pope County do not have that power. That power is in the hands of our mayor and our county judge, not the people of the county, and it was done so without ever speaking to us about it. Thank you.
Questions from the committee? Senator Hester?
So we understand why this bill, but I was thinking back to how this got passed. Was there an organized statewide ordination group fighting this amendment? Do you remember? There
was no group fighting this amendment, unfortunately.
There should be like a family-oriented group organized throughout the state that would go fight stuff like this. We should think about that.
Yes, thank you. I agree. I was disappointed to see that there were no groups, no conservative groups, no family-oriented groups that stepped up to fight this. And on the other side, we had over $9 million pushing to approve gambling in the state of Arkansas, and no one stepped up to fight it.
Senator Hickey?
Question, and on the surface, I definitely agree with what you're trying to do. However, did we happen to research back within the Constitution to see if we have any other cities or counties that in the past that their names was used so that we could, my only concern would be that there could possibly be a time that maybe that we would need to do that. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any, but I was wondering, did we research that to see if we have anything from the past?
Yes, there are other things of the past. I think of Garland County specifically, but a lot of times, though, in those situations, the voters had a true local option. So before, that thing could be granted, the people had to actually vote to approve it in that county. And that was not granted to us with issue 4.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Again, no one has signed up to speak for or against this, so thank you very much for the presentation.
Okay, we're in the middle of live coverage of the Senate State Agencies Committee. They convened this morning at 7 o'clock. They are in the middle of a debate over proposed constitutional amendments. I see Senator Garner is taking to the end of the table now. His bill, SJR 7, is a proposed constitutional amendment providing for annual regular sessions of the General Assembly and authorizing the General Assembly to convene itself in a special session. So he wants the General Assembly to meet every year. Now, the reason they're not voting on these yet is because they can only refer 3. The House and Senate have to agree. They can only refer 3 constitutional amendments per, election cycle. Let's listen to Senator Trent Garner.
This legislator coming now once every 2 years to really make decisions and to make the budget, that business would have major problems. I think back to an issue I know Senator Caldwell was heavily involved with, very important issue, the PBM issue, and how that reared its head. Now, fortunately, we had a governor who didn't mind calling a special session for that issue. I think Governor Hutchinson is a great governor to work with the legislator when it comes to issues we find important. But if we weren't in a session at that time and that issue popped its head and the governor did not want to address it, there'd be very little we could do to rectify that situation. And what if other situations happen like that? Now, I know we're concerned with being down here too much, up here too much. It's down here for most of this body. For me, it's up. This bill, I think, is a good happy medium because instead of being here for 60 days and having the session go on and on and on like we do, it's limited to 30 days with an extension possible. So under my bill, if we were here right now, we wouldn't be here at 7 o'clock in the morning. We'd all be home. I think that's an important part of it. With that, I'll take any questions.
Members? Senator Hickey?
Comment possibly between Senator Hendren and yours. I don't know that I really agree with either one of them. However, I do think that there might be some merit that if we did something along what Senator Hendren was wanting to do, and Senator Ingram, I guess they're both on there, that I wonder if there'd be a way, and I'd want it to be a high threshold, where the legislature itself could call a special session. And again, how we do that and the mechanics of it, I don't know. A certain number of the total House and Senate or something of that nature. And again, nothing towards this governor. It's like everybody always short-sighted and think I'm talking about that. But in years to come, I don't know that wouldn't be a good tool just to have in the toolbox in the event we needed it.
Senator Hickey, this bill does have a part to address that we as legislators could call a special session. It's part of this amendment. And the thought process behind that was if there's an extraordinary situation and we had a governor who didn't think it was time to call a special session, we'd have that power.
Excuse me, sir. What page is that on? Do you have it in front of you?
I do not, sir.
I missed that.
I can explain it in general terms the way we came up with it. It might not be the most perfect answer, but basically I think a majority or 2/3 of the Senate and House have to come together and agree to an organizational meeting, and at that organizational meeting after the fact, we would establish a special session. It's an imperfect way to do it. Me and BLR had a hard time kind of coming up with the correct mechanism to do that. But, if this got serious consideration, I think it's something that we could definitely work on to refine.
Okay. Again, I apologize. I guess I missed that in here.
Yes, sir.
We're in the middle of live coverage. Senate State Agencies Committee convened about 19 minutes ago, and we're just covering. This is a debate over proposed constitutional amendments. They get 3 every 2 years to refer to the people to vote on. This one by Senator Garner would say that the General Assembly would meet every year instead of every other year, but he said it would only be 30 days. And it looks like Senator Garner is closed for his bill. And let's see, who do we have next up? Because I've got the list of the actually, anyone want to speak for or against? It looks like somebody's going to speak against. Let's listen in here.
If you would, please turn your mic on, introduce yourself, and you're recognized.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Paul Calvert. Let me just start off by pointing out something that's already in the Arkansas Constitution. Article 5, Section 22 of the Arkansas Constitution requires each House of the General Assembly to read each bill at length a minimum of 3 times. We all know this law is not being followed. If this law was followed, it would dramatically slow down the legislature in their efforts to pass legislation. If the Arkansas legislature would start following Article 5, Section 22 of the Arkansas Constitution, I would strongly consider supporting the idea of having a regular session each year, because far less could be done in a regular session. But as it currently stands, Article 5, Section 22 is rather clearly being disobeyed, and many hundreds of bills are being passed each session. And as it currently stands, I don't think I can support a session each year with the way the Arkansas Constitution is being disobeyed currently. But if it started being followed, I think I might actually support it. But thank you.
Anyone have any questions for? All right.
Yes.
And I don't guess I've ever read that. You said 3 times by the General Assembly?
On each house.
Sir?
In each house, yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Some education going on a little bit. Now, if I had to imagine, I would they say it has to be read 3 times, because when they say read the bill, at least on the House floor and the Senate floor, they just read the bill number a lot of times, or they read the title a lot of times. I understand Senator Bart Hester's now taking to the end of the table. His proposed constitutional amendment is SJR 8, a constitutional amendment permitting limits on awards of punitive and non-economic damages, tort reform. Let's listen in.
Small, simple bill with big implications for the state of Arkansas. What this constitutional amendment would do, it would allow the Assembly to establish economic damages controls, to establish the amount of punitive damages and non-economic damages that may be awarded for each claimant, and actions for injuries resulting from the death or injuries of persons or property, including without limitation to medical injuries. So I think this is something we've all debated on. If you've been in the legislature, you've heard these debates over and over and over. And why I think they're important for the state of Arkansas is twofold. If we want to talk about economics, we talk about we've spent 2 years working on tax reform. Right? Why are we doing tax reform? We're doing tax reform to hopefully recruit businesses to the state of Arkansas so that we can have better jobs for the people of Arkansas, because we value their human life, because we value their lives to have a quality of life. We want people to have good paying jobs. We want good paying jobs all over the state of Arkansas, not just Northwest Arkansas. We spent years working on health care and insurance. Why do we do that? We want people to have good health care and insurance because we want people of Arkansas to have a quality of life. We can look, I've got a simple map here that I'm happy to pass around, and I'll email out to all of you guys. But one thing that we do know, when businesses are looking to move to Arkansas, there was a survey done in 2017 that surveyed 1,300 business executives of companies of over $100 million in revenue. 85% of those said that some sort of tort reform was something that was very important to them when they looked to a state that they were going to move to. And if you look at Arkansas, we're an island, or actually the reverse of an island. Everyone around us, everyone in the South has some sort of economic damages or non-economic damage caps or punitive caps. So we're putting Arkansas out there when somebody's looking to relocate and says, if this is important to you, don't come to Arkansas. And in response to that, we're telling the people of Arkansas, we don't value you enough to give you an opportunity to have a good job, take care of your family. We're doing great in some parts of Arkansas, but not all parts of Arkansas. And I believe that this amendment to our Constitution will bring better jobs to the state of Arkansas. It's proven. It's proven in other states. We all like to use Texas as an example. But they're seeing nothing but growth from the West Coast, growth from the East Coast, people headed to Texas, and we believe that this is one of the reasons they're experiencing such good growth. Second reason is health care for the people of Arkansas. I sat on the health care committee, and we heard yesterday that Arkansas is 44th out of 50 in health care. I'll give you a few other examples on health care. We're 48 in infant deaths, 44 in maternal deaths, 50 in the environment for emergency care. Why are we in this position? We have a very difficult time recruiting doctors in Arkansas to come to Arkansas or to stay in Arkansas. Why is that? We absolutely believe that it's our tort laws in the state of Arkansas. Why would you practice here when you can move to Texas and be exempt, and you can spend your time focusing on health care of your people rather than fighting off lawyers and frivolous lawsuits? All right, that's we can see in Texas, after they passed caps, they saw 300 or 400% in geriatric care for our elderly people. Again, that's a human life issue. That's a valuing of human life issue that the people that have lived the longest had access to care.
Okay,
they saw 300% care in pediatrics.
Senator Barton has talking about his proposed constitutional amendment permitting limits on awards of damages. The legislature would set those limits if passed, but we have to take a break right now, so don't go anywhere.
The supreme law of the land.
Okay, so I mean, what you've just said there is something that I've talked about before. It's been a while. I mean, but we're not operating with any sort of constitutional framework then, because you look at all of these agencies that operate under the executive branch that Congress itself created, and they create all these rules, or they can submit them to the federal registry. They're rules, but they're essentially laws, because if you don't follow them, you either pay a fine or go to jail. It's the same thing that happens if you don't obey a law. And so Congress, is not supposed to be able to take their lawmaking authority and just give it to another body. But that's what's happened time and time again. So, I mean, how long has this been going on, Chris Ann? I mean, this is really, we haven't been operating under the document we have for decades, if not, a century, it seems like.
Well, and it's what you're saying, what you're really telling us, and what we must admit is that we have a completely lawless government when they act.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
We got 2 minutes. We got 2 minutes left before we got to go back to break. We got a hard break coming in. They're debating. Looks like another tort reform amendment. This one would give the legislature authority to pass laws concerning this. Senator Bart Hester. Let's go back to him live in the State Agencies Committee room.
They want a trial attorney, and ultimately the judiciary setting them, which we have seen over and over and over again, is not on the side of the people.
All right. Thank you.
Senator Bond, you're.
I was going to wait for everybody else. I think everybody knows what I am.
Let's see here. Looks like.
Thank you for your support, Senator Bond.
Senator Bond, you're recognized.
Well, I can't. Obviously, this is sort of my industry. I'm a plaintiff's lawyer. I mean, I don't think that's any secret. It's been disclosed. So, but a couple of things I just couldn't let go. I think Senator Hester and I are aware that we're on the opposite sides of this issue. So, with regards to rural Arkansas access to care, I mean, I think we just have a dispute as to what the statistics show on that. Going back to 2003, there was a change in the original push for tort reform on the venue statute. So in Arkansas, if you have a malpractice case against a doctor, you have to file where the care was given. Meaning, if I drive up to Benton County to have a procedure and I claim malpractice, I have to file in Benton County. And so the jury that hears that case are 12 local citizens to determine whether that local doctor committed malpractice. And so it's not, if you have to sue a doctor in Union County, that's where you have to sue. And there's local people that make these decisions. It's not some mysterious form of decision making. I think that was a change that was
the biggest thing I would everybody we came off this tort reform and the Supreme Court throwing it off the ballot last time. It looks like they're going to take another stab at it. There is, I believe, tort reform generally is a good thing, and there's a good way to do it. There's a wrong way to do it. we're going to keep following this issue, folks.
Under these laws that are made contrary to the Constitution and outside constitutional authority. Now, from an academic perspective, I can trace that back to 1833, when we began teaching that the lawlessness of our Congress should be acceptable. And that's when we really started changing our perspective on how Congress, how the Constitution, and even how the judiciary and the executive branches are to operate. And so we didn't begin actually operating lawlessly in 1833, but that's when the plans of this errant understanding and application of the Constitution began at the academic level.
Wow.
So we've been teaching the wrong things since 1833. And here's the key. Samuel Adams, our founders, warned us about errant education and a lawless federal government. Samuel Adams said, "No people will tamely surrender their liberties nor be easily subdued when knowledge is diffused and virtue is preserved." He said, but on the contrary, when the people become universally ignorant and debauched in their manners, they will sink underneath their own weight without the aid of foreign invaders. And meanwhile, we are so distracted by every invention of federal drama that we're missing the fact that our greatest threat in America doesn't come from a southern border or an ISIS invasion. They are the product. Those threats are the very product of the ignorance that has been thrust upon the American people to keep us just distracted and dedicated to the wrong things in government.
We're talking with Chris Ann Hall. She's a constitutional attorney and educator. She's a radio host. You can find out more about her great class at Liberty First University. Again, she's going to be tonight. Actually, you're crossing the border, Chris Ann. You're going to be in Sallisaw, Oklahoma, at Sequoia County Fairgrounds at 7 p.m. Presenting on Liberty First University. But then the next 2 nights in Jonesboro at the Hilton Garden Inn, then down to Hot Springs over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. You can find this, folks. We got this posted up at conduitnews.com, and also know it's up at is it Liberty First University or chrisannhall.com.
chrisannhall.com. We have a calendar on chrisannhall.com, and it gives you all of our appearances. We travel all over America. We have, for the last 7 years, averaged about 260 classes in over 22 states, and we are just so excited to be.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. We're going to take a step back from the Senate State Agencies Committee. They are actually meeting right now live. We've been bringing you that live coverage for the last half hour. They've been debating proposed constitutional amendments, really just all kinds of constitutional amendments. And the reason they do that again is because they want to kind of narrow it down, because they only get three every 2 years to refer to the people. We're going to take a step back from that live coverage, and we're going to welcome back to the program. We've got Fort Smith attorney Joey McCutcheon is on the line. Joey, how are you, sir? Joey, can you hear me?
Morning, Paul. Hey, I can hear you now.
All right, great. Hey, and you're actually on the road right now, right?
I am, yes.
Okay, all right. Well, be safe in talking to us. The reason I wanted to have you on is because...
I pulled over.
Okay, you pulled over. Okay, great.
Yeah.
The reason I wanted to have you on is because I have interviewed, I think, at least 2 people on the issue that Fort Smith's going through right now, which is a proposed tax increase that's going to fund the U.S. Marshals Museum. And originally, this was something that was only going to be a privately funded venture, but now they're looking to the public, they're looking to the people, taxing them more to try to build this building and everything else. And first off, let's just talk about your thoughts on that, and then I want to get to the idea of debating the issue. But what are your thoughts on where this issue is currently?
Well, Paul, we've got to be fiscally responsible. I mean, we're seeing it across this state. If you can't afford something, then you don't build it, and that's the problem here. Fort Smith has several white elephants. We've talked about the River Valley Sports Complex fiasco that now the citizens are saddled with. This is just another irresponsible endeavor. And I'm fine with the Marshals Museum. I support the Marshals Museum, but I don't think this ought to be foisted on the taxpayers to pay for. Only in government would you get something like this, where they've raised $35 million or so. And again, $8 million has already come from the state taxpayers. Now they've created this entity called the Public Facilities Board. I mean, this is amazing. They're going to it's going to be composed of citizens, and the citizens, these 5 citizens, would now buy and own the museum building and grounds. Hello, does that not raise red flags? They will have no responsibility when this project fails. Who do you think's going to pick up the tab? Mm-hmm. We, the taxpayers.
We've also had some talk about who benefits from a scheme like this. And a lot of people have told me that it's going to be, people who own the real estate surrounding the museum. Is that right?
Absolutely. And, last night there was a meeting of the downtown players. They're going to reap the benefit. They should pay for it. Why put this on taxpayers? Don't forget that Fort Smith just passed a huge millage increase. I wonder if these same players why didn't they bring up this subject when they were trying to pass their millage increase? And I bet they're not also talking about what's getting ready to happen to the taxpayers of Fort Smith. They're going to they'll be asking for another tax to fund the convention center. You see, the city of Fort Smith spends $700,000 a year to $1 million funding a white elephant called the Fort Smith Convention Center that we can't pay for. Wow. This is just going to be another white elephant. They say this is a temporary tax. Come on, we know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. They'll let time pass, and they'll be asking for another increase in our taxes when all the current players are gone, and they'll say, "Oh, well, we weren't involved in that. This project's too big to fail." We've heard that before, haven't we, Paul?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we're seeing that right now at the state level. You had a 0.5-cent sales tax increase, pay for roads that was set to expire in 2022, and it looks like they're going to refer it back to the people to maintain that. So they don't want it to sunset now that it's going to, according to the statute. So we're talking with Fort Smith Attorney Joey McCutcheon. Now, tell us a little bit about the community here in Fort Smith. How do they feel about it? And has there been any attempt to have a public forum to discuss whether or not the citizens or whether or not it would be a good thing to increase the taxes on the people of Fort Smith?
Well, what I'm hearing from everyday citizens is that they're paying $300 a month for utilities, and that's another white elephant. Fort Smith city government, through irresponsibility. We have an EPA mandate, and they've increased utility rates. This is a terrible time to try to foist this upon the citizens of Fort Smith. We've had several public forums. The opponents have had a public forum, and we'll have more. The other side has had public forums, but I challenged them to a debate, and immediately we can't debate. We don't want a one-on-one debate. But what we will agree to, and they put this in the form of a letter, we propose a moderated panel with 3 knowledgeable people on each side, and questions should be permitted, public input allowed. Then, after that, they start backtracking. And then they send me an email stating that we don't want the public to be present at that meeting. You're just a bunch of rowdy folks, and you just can't control yourself, and it just wouldn't be a civil type. And we don't want to debate. I'm like, okay, Well, we will never agree that the public will not be present in that room. We will never agree to that. So promptly, through this charade, after back and forth, they declined to, quote, debate or have a panel discussion with the moderator. I agreed, and we agreed to every term except that the public would not be there. I mean, what are they trying to hide? Why wouldn't they want the public to be present in the room? They wanted some kind of Facebook Live, which is fine. Let's do it Facebook Live, but let's also have the public who is going to be financing this museum.
You know, that's so frustrating when people are wanting the taxpayer money, and it's almost like they want to game it out ahead of time. They want to be able to manipulate it to where they can script it out, and they have a script. There's not going to be any surprises. There's not going to be any question. I think some of that is because we have some leaders, honestly, who get into positions of power and they're afraid, like the biggest nightmare is that they're going to get a question and be made to look foolish or something like that. You know, but it doesn't make any sense. I mean, you know, transparency is key. If you're gonna, increase taxes, let's do it in a transparent way. Now, the fact is, this is a special election, Joey, right? So already transparency, as far as I'm concerned, is thrown out the window, because if it's in a general election, more people would show up and vote, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to say this. I have a lot of respect for the folks working for the Marshals Museum. But look, they've made a lot. Haven't done that. I mean, we knew they were going to be asking for general improvement fund. You know, we knew they were going to the slush fund. That was talk. But what they didn't say is that they were going to come to local taxpayers. It's another. Why in the world are we having another special election? I mean, why are we giving preference to the Marshals Museum? Oh, they say, well, we'll pay for the special election. Well, doesn't that set a pretty bad precedent, Paul? What if I come? Do you think, or some John Q. Public comes? Do you think they're going to allow? Hey, I want to have a special election to fund my special pet project. They're opening up a can of worms here, and frankly, they've gone around our Constitution to do this. They've created this Public Facilities Board, which has no accountability to anyone. They've asked in a special way. This thing's been going on for 12 years now. There is a plan B.
Yeah.
If you don't have enough money to build a Taj Mahal, then you downsize. Originally, they were saying this is going to be a $20 million project, 30,000 square foot. Now it's $50 million. If I'm building a house and I can't afford a big old house, then guess what? I don't start building the house, number one, until I have the money to pay for it. That's another issue here.
That's a good point. Joey McCutcheon, tell us when the special election is for this tax increase for Fort Smith.
The special election is March 12th. Early voting, I believe, starts March 5th. Paul, I know that the Marshals Museum folks are listening to this call right now. I want to ask them and challenge them to reconsider their refusal to allow the public to attend a forum moderated by Michael Tilley. Michael Tilley has agreed to moderate this. Michael's going to control the questioning from the public. The public deserves this. And if they don't do this thing ought to go down in flames. This is just a betrayal of the public trust. They need to reconsider whatever the power players downtown are telling them, that, they're throwing out a bunch of red herrings. So I'm challenging them right now to reconsider their declining to have a public discussion where people are in the same room answering tough questions about this white elephant.
I think that's the obvious thing to do. And Joey McCutcheon, I appreciate you coming on and once again shedding light on this potential tax increase for Fort Smith. We appreciate it, sir. Be safe in your travels.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
Alrighty.
Have a good day.
Yes, sir. Anytime. Folks, we're going to cut now away live to the State Agencies Committee and the Senate State Agencies Committee. They are debating proposed amendments right now live. Right now, they are on a big one. It is SJR 8 by Senator Bart Hester, a constitutional amendment permitting limits on awards of punitive and non-economic damages. So another tort reform, another bill aimed at tort reform. And apparently, I don't know if this is a gentleman speaking for or speaking against Senator Hester's bill, but let's listen in live.
It's because of a billing problem that he seems to have. I actually even have a drawing here. It shows you all the states in the last 10 years that have lost rural hospitals, and Arkansas is the only one. All of our tort friendly states around us that have all done tort reform, they've lost rural hospitals, and we haven't. As a mayor and as a member of the hospital board, I did a lot of doctor recruitment. And not only does DeQueen have trouble getting rural doctors in these other communities that were mentioned earlier, just across the state line in Oklahoma, they also are having difficulty getting rural doctors in the same size communities. Rural America everywhere, as we all know, there's urbanization of the country. Rural America everywhere is having a difficult time. In fact, the statistics show that tort and non-tort states alike are equally struggling in rural areas.
So it seems
Texas actually is losing doctors in rural areas 1% faster than Arkansas is. While Texas had a massive growth of physicians after they did tort, if you take that on per capita, they actually did not have any growth because they had massive population growth as well. And so somebody asked earlier, I think it was Senator Bond, about premiums. Arkansas's malpractice premiums, in 2009, the average premium was $24,000, and in 2018, it's $23,875. Our rates have stayed about the same and actually went down just slightly. If we compare that, if we start looking into specialties, I think someone specifically asked about OBGYNs. In Arkansas, the malpractice premium for OBGYNs are, states that have adopted tort have caps, have 36% higher rates than Arkansas does. The average premium OBGYN rate for 2018 in Arkansas is $40,674. States with caps, the average rate is $55,420. When I was recruiting doctors, a lot of doctors would say to me after they've been to med school and they're finally out and they're trying to figure out where they're going to go, a lot of doctors would tell me reasons that they weren't coming to rural Arkansas. Never once did they say it was because of tort. If they weren't coming to rural Arkansas, they weren't going to rural Oklahoma or rural Texas. It's because they wanted to be in a faster paced place. They wanted to specialize. They didn't want to have as much ER coverage. And I know rural communities well. It's where I live and spend my time. And they're also having trouble recruiting all sorts of professionals. We don't have architects anymore in rural communities. We don't have jewelry shops anymore. We don't have engineers anymore. Some counties in the state no longer have attorneys. So this is an ongoing issue. I thank you for indulging me on your time. Just a couple more things to mention about this. Aside from this issue on the malpractice rates are not worse here, they're actually better. Last year, the Arkansas Medical Society posted an article by physicians' practices that they touted that said Arkansas is one of the top 5 states to practice medicine in, better than all of the states that surround us, ranked by a wide variety of issues. The American College of Emergency Physicians said Arkansas ER physicians earn 12% more than national average, with an average salary of $397,000. According to the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, Arkansas has the 10th lowest malpractice premium in the nation.
We have been covering this hour. They've already heard Senator Hendren's SJR 1, which would be a proposed constitutional amendment to reduce the number of days the General Assembly is in session. Then we heard a big one from Senator Dave Wallace, which is a constitutional amendment providing that the state of Arkansas shall never be made a defendant in any of her courts unless otherwise provided by law. This one is to try to stop the sovereign immunity disaster, the fiasco, the reality that we now all live in, where we can't sue the government in most cases. We also heard from Senator Breann Davis. She had a proposed constitutional amendment providing that future ballot initiatives not reference one or more counties or cities by name if the intent is to grant those counties or cities special powers, privileges, opportunities, or benefits. This obviously is a direct response to the fact that the other 74 counties in this state dictated to one county, Pope County, that they have to have a casino in their county. And I know the judge and stuff has to get behind it, but you know what I mean. It is wrong. There's no question about that. Then we have Senator Trent Gardner, a constitutional amendment providing for the annual regular sessions of the General Assembly. So he wants to meet 30 days every year, but only 30 days. And also it would give the General Assembly the authority to call a special session itself without having to rely on the governor to do so. And right now they are debating SJR 8. This is, live right now, which is a constitutional amendment permitting limits on awards of punitive and non-economic damages. This is looks like it's another attempt at tort reform. Again, obviously, I've always said that tort reform is something that needs to happen in this state. It certainly does. I did not support the last effort at tort reform because it was a step too far, and for a lot of reasons, and we don't have to rehash those now. It appears that this particular amendment would allow the legislature to set, and from what I can tell, this would allow the legislature to set those benefits or those at some point in the future. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a break here. We'll stop, take a break, reset, and be back here in just a moment. Thanks for listening, ladies and gentlemen.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Real quick, because I want to kind of get back to what we talked about at just the very beginning. So you mentioned on the sovereignty of the states. So the Congress fails to act, right? So I'm talking thinking idealistically, but at the same time, practically. So let's say Texas is like, it's up to us. Texas, we're going to build this border. We're going to secure our border.
Right.
We of course know that would be challenged in court, right? I mean, that's the reality that we live in.
Well, the reality, okay, so that is the forced reality, yes. But the true application of the understanding of the Constitution is that even if the federal court would tell the states that they are not to exercise this power, the states would understand by Article 6, Clause 2, and by Article 3, the delegation of power to the judicial branch, that particular
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back. Yeah, I'm looking in here live with the live Senate State Agencies Committee, and they're debating this proposal for tort reform. And from what I can tell, Chad Gallagher, the mayor or former mayor of DeQueen, is he currently still the mayor? Anyway, Chad Gallagher's been speaking against it. Let's go now. I believe Senator Bob Ballinger's addressing Chad Gallagher. Let's listen in.
Flexibility in order for the court for some circumstances. All those things are the type of thing that a policymaking body is supposed to have. And while, I mean, you're right, like, you know, we're made up of extremely flawed people, like, you know, none of us are angels, you know, going back to Madison. However, we also know that about juries, right? I mean, you don't have to read very much. I mean, you know, Google, you know, a jury member bribed, right? That kind of thing happens too. And the reason why is juries are made up of people. None of them are angels either. And so, you know, I do hate the fact that we've went through, you know, a bunch of fraud and corruption, in particular in this body. And I hate the fact that we've had colleagues who were subject to that. You know, God forgive them, right? And it does make it where all of a sudden all the rest of us have to work real hard to try to avoid being wrapped up into that. But ultimately, that's what, you know, regnant populace, people rule. Well, we're a republic through their elected representatives. And this body is the body that was put together to make policymaking decisions. And that's why, you know, we had that policy argument of $1 million, which you supported, versus $500,000. And I mean, I think $1 million cap is reasonable. I think that's, I mean, I think there may be good arguments for $1 million cap. Probably some circumstances ought to be less. But ultimately, my reason why I appreciate Senator Hester bringing this is because it gives us that opportunity to have that discussion and have that argument. You know, the question of the med mal premiums, you know, it's a question of you know, facts and details and things that should be debated. Well, we don't even have that opportunity to do that. We don't even have that opportunity to discuss that. I mean, you can kind of see what my issues are with not being able to even have that discussion. Like, you know, you're arguing that there's good policy reasons for us not to have a cap, and so we shouldn't even amend the Constitution so we can even have that policy arguments about caps. I mean, you can understand, like, what my concerns are here.
Yeah, what I would say to that, Senator, thank you, is that
there is first off in regard to my side. Hey, I appreciate you guys listening. We've been trying to bring you live coverage of what's going on in the Senate State Agencies Committee. And that was Bob Ballinger saying, hey, listen, this bill of Senator Hester's, it would just allow the legislature to debate the caps and craft legislation about what the tort system should be and everything else. And we're going to dive into this and bring you as much information as we can on this and all of the proposed constitutional amendments that might wind up on your ballot coming up next year. So anyway, folks, that is all the time that we have for this program. We're going to be back in studio, back home for Johnny Cash Friday tomorrow, bringing you the latest headlines and updates. For more information, as always, you can go to conduitnews.com. Arkansas. Thanks for listening and be safe.